Yes.
Mataji.
Okay.
Yeah, very
Okay. All right. Super. All right. Thank you very much. So we are discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse 37. Sanjaya Uvacha Naham Veda Vyavasitam Pitrorva Kulanandana Gandharya Va Mahabaho Mushitosmi Mahatmabhi. Sanjaya said, "My dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls." Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. That great souls cheat others may be astonishing to know, but it is a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Krishna also advised Yudhishthira to tell a lie before Dronacharya, and it was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of one who is bona fide, and the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. That is the verdict of Gita and Bhagavatam. Dhritarashtra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjaya, although he was constantly with Dhritarashtra as his personal assistant. Sanjaya never thought that Dhritarashtra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhritarashtra's going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjaya. Sanatana Goswami also cheated the keeper of the prison house while going away to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And similarly, Raghunatha Das Goswami also cheated his priest and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord, anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. Om Atnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this chapter, in this chapter, Vidura is coming back, as many of you have discussed the topic already. Almost it is towards the end of the chapter. Vidura came back because he had a special intention of giving the right advice to his blind brother. Dhritarashtra, when we look at Dhritarashtra's life, we see that throughout his life, he was somewhat cripple-minded. He had very good association. But in spite of that, he always supported his son, Duryodhana, against the advice given by such great personalities. When we say great personalities, the Supreme Lord Krishna himself was there. Vyasadeva was there. Vidura was there. Bhishma was there. All these personalities gave good advice to Dhritarashtra, but he didn't listen to any one of them because of his deep attachment to his son, Duryodhana. So practically, we can see that his spiritual progress was completely blocked. So there is a lesson for us to learn from this. First of all, we as practicing devotees, we all need to recognize the need for guidance from spiritual authorities or Vaishnavas who are serious in their spiritual practice. It is a must. It is a must for any progress that one can make in spiritual life. Without the blessings of the Vaishnavas and the guidance, without our accepting, implementing it in our life, nothing is going to happen. So also we are in Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga has its own good and bad qualities. And yet we all know Kali Yuga, it is said that we are mandastu mandamadayo mandabhagya. We are very, very unfortunate. And so we need to take the help from those who are spiritually well situated. And even if you take what is this Satya Yuga, even in those times, people who perfected in Ashtanga Yoga, they also needed some sort of guidance from spiritual authorities and Vedic scriptures. So it is a fact that the elements for spiritual life, it is there within each and every one of us, or that which is attainable, sadhya, it is there within the heart of all the living entities. But we got to remember that that need to be brought out by a divine process, not by any material means. We cannot bring out that spiritual enlightenment, and we have the potential to completely remove the covering on our soul. We have the potential. We are spirit souls, but that divine process, we have to subject ourselves to that divine process. This is very, very important practical thing that everybody must introspect and really implement if anyone is serious about making any spiritual progress. And so we hear it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kahunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koreye Udai. By constantly chanting the name of the God and also hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is, we have heard this a million times from everybody. When we study, when we hear, when so many devotees speak about chanting of the holy name and the hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam. But we don't realize that this is the factor which is catalyzing our spiritual life, or which is energizing our spiritual life. We don't fully get it. Otherwise, that potency, with that potential that we have, it will remain dormant. And a mundane example is like a bomb to explode. It has that detonator cap. This thing has to function properly. Otherwise, it will not explode. So the spiritual life is like that, and we can even say that it is a million times more than that. So the ingredient that is needed for our spiritual life is association and submissiveness to the great personalities. What is association? Association sometimes is misunderstood as something like you just go and sit near somebody or hold someone's hand. That is not association. Association really means that one is willing to take instructions. One must be prepared to take instructions. Then when we say instruction, you will see this, periodically someone may be willing to take and then you forget again. I mean, even that is better than no willingness at all whatsoever to take any instruction. But anyway, that is association, nothing else. But then the question will come, I have this minute independence of my own, and I have my own rational intelligence. What do I do with those? There is no one is telling that we should reject our rational intelligence. There is no such, we cannot function that way. So we have to maintain some equanimity and evenness of mind and all those things. But we have to remember, we need to remain open to this process. And what do you mean by open to the process? We should constantly remind ourselves that association means willingness to accept guidance and implement it in our life, and we have to remain open to that process. Otherwise, we will not make any progress. So we don't want blind faith, but we don't want to be blind with doubt also. So no one is preventing anyone from making decisions, and yet there is a balance. So one need to understand that. So what then when we say associating with surrendered souls, what does that mean? Surrendered soul means surrendered in terms of renunciation. Surrendered in terms of renunciation. So there is a saying that the barometer, the measurement for one's spiritual advancement, it will be shown by how much one is able to cut that knot of attachment. We chant those verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. Vidyade hridaya grandhir chidyande sarva samshaya. The knot in the heart is pierced. The knot of attachment. So a barometer for someone who has advanced in spiritual life, it is the indication is that that person is able to cut that knot of attachment for everything that is temporary or ephemeral. Now, in this material world, even in its state of completeness, let us say that we see a perfect situation, everything is going well and life is beautiful, there is no issues whatsoever. Even in such a perfected condition, we got to remember this is a temporary manifestation. How long we desire to hang on to this thing, it will be destroyed. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. Bhudagramasya evayam Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. Ratriagame avasya partha prabhavatyahar agame. Krishna says again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all the living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. So even if the material situation is perfect without any kind of a problem, you can be assured that situation also will disappear. So someone who has learned this, how to act in this material world in that spirit of detachment, that is the person, surrendered in terms of renunciation. That is that person, a person who know how to act in the spirit of detachment. So it is such a person we have to associate with, and then we will get the inspiration to get detached. Otherwise, we are like foolish people, and we are cowardly people, and we think, okay, we are getting some association just by looking at a person. No, we are simply wasting their time, and we are also wasting our time. It's no use just by thinking that, okay, I will look at this person, I will hold his hand or something, and you are going to get detached. One should submissively go and hear from such renounced people and attentively hear the instructions given by them, incorporate in our life and implement it. And that is what you call it as this process. And we have to be open to this process while we are still being independent, thinking, willing individuals. This is not a place where we exert our will over somebody else. That's not the point here. The point is associating and learning from such people, implementing it in our life. We will make some progress in this area of detachment. And the other thing is about instructions. When a spiritual guide gives instructions, the first thing that we always hear is it is shiksha. Shiksha means instruction. initial stage. And then we hear from such a person, and a spiritual guide would test the disciple. Test in the sense that they have their way of knowing who we are. They can very see through us very clearly. And that stage is called testing stage, which is pariksha. So shiksha is there, then pariksha is there, and then comes diksha. So you don't just jump from shiksha to diksha. There are these days that is become another issue. It's like you start taking shiksha, and immediately within a few seconds that you want to take diksha. In between, there is no room for testing or pariksha. There is no room for that at all. So diksha means, we normally think of diksha as the formal initiation. It can also mean, accepting instructions. And so taking those instructions to the heart and changing our lives, our habits, our way of acting, and therefore the way we look at this world will change. Our paradigm will change. So this will take time, because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is that? Bahunam janmanam ante Gnanavan mam prapadyade vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. It takes millions of lifetimes for one to come to accept Krishna. Vasudeva is everything. So it is like millions of lifetimes that the accumulated impressions, what we have gone through. Ultimately, we received this human form of life. So if it took so much time from material point of view, of course, from spiritual perspective, time, it is different. So if it took so many lifetimes to entangle ourselves into this current situation we are in, how can we expect to unentangle within like a quick span of time? It is not common sense, unless you hear about some extraordinary mercy cases where somebody get that blessing from Krishna or Guru or some wonderful Vaishnava. It comes in our way. Yes, well and good. But otherwise, if you take it normally speaking, if it took unlimited lifetimes to be so entangled like the way we are, heavily entangled and continuing to be entangled, because we all have these deep attachments to so many things in our life, it is not realistic to expect to unentangle quickly. It takes time. You get entangled, takes time. It takes time to unentangle also. So what is our shelter? Shelter is those Vaishnavas who have perfected their life in showing us by the real example of what detachment really means. Detachment from that which is matter and attachment, deep attachment to Krishna alone. One should associate with such personalities. So we have to be prepared to execute these instructions from such personalities, and we have to fully stick with that. And then comes the question of physically serving a person or hearing. And we see that again and again, it is stressed that hearing, Vani, is more important than Vapu. Vapu may be very pleasing, but the sound vibration, it is more important. The saintly personalities, such persons, they know how to reveal Krishna to us according to our situation. Our situation means each one of us come under the influence of the modes of nature. So we are interacting with the modes of nature, and a spiritual guide knows, looking at a person, how they conduct themselves, which way we are entangled. They know that, and accordingly they can guide us. So one time Prabhupada said that, in the very beginning of his establishing Krishna consciousness throughout the world, that he introduced deity worship, and he said that if he revealed everything in the deity worship department, it will blow your mind. But he did not introduce everything in deity worship in the early stages, but in course of time, he revealed it more and more. Now, if you go and look at each and every temple, the degree to which they implement these standards, it varies. We know this. We know this so well. Every time when a festival comes, there is a question, or is it Ekadashi Prasadam, non-Ekadashi Prasadam, what to do this way, that way. And everybody cuts corners, and somebody else comes and tells you, oh, this one I cannot help, but we have to do this way of prasadam. And there is a reason why certain instructions are there, but everybody do not follow all those standards. And that's why we have the deity worship ministry who establishes the standards, and they are trying their level best to implement it all over the world. Look at when we do Abhishek, everybody, we need to, there are million different opinions that you cannot do that. We want to let the whole general public to come and do Abhishek. Deity worship ministry gave us clear instructions what to do. And so sometimes, people don't understand the degree to which Prabhupada wanted us to be trained and how the temples should be run. Nobody is thinking about that when everybody comes with their viewpoint. So as practicing devotees, each and every one of us need to take those instructions very seriously and implement it properly. So what is the process? Is it Vani or Vapu? It is Vapu. It is Vani in the end, because the process is hearing. So you don't go just simply to see a sage. Examples of that can be seen in the scriptures also. Remember the Vyasadeva story where Ambika and Ambalika needed to have some progeny for the continuation of the dynasty. So Vyasadeva was supposed to father the children. And Vyasadeva is none other than the literary incarnation of Krishna. And yet the description of Vyasadeva is he was like jet black in color, and his matted hair and ugly looking. He was not like very attractive externally. So when he approached Ambika, she got really scared and she closed her eyes. And that's how Dhritarashtra was born, blind. And Ambalika was, she turned paper white color, and Pandu got that skin color. And the servant lady, she was very mindful. She understood what is the position of Vyasadeva, and she served him so nicely. Vidura was born. So you can see the result of association. It is not about looking and seeing a person. It is the attitude with which each person approached. So sometimes there is danger in going near a saintly person, in the sense that if you form some kind of opinions about them. Example is like a Ashtavakra Muni. He was paraplegic, 8 bends in the body and literally crawling on the ground like a snake. And when anybody looking at such a person would wonder, he cannot even stand upon his feet, and one may critically observe this and form opinions about such a saintly person, instead of getting really understanding his position and appreciating that. What about Jada Bharata is another example where it is Bharat Maharaj, and yet, he appeared like stunted or ignorant, or sometimes like a mongoloid idiot kind of a expression on his face. But he was such a saintly person until the king recognized that nobody could see what his position was. So coming back to Vidura, who came to give this wonderful chastisement to Dhritarashtra at the end of his life, he was a person of worshipable character. He was a great soul, highly respected. And interestingly, Dhritarashtra also loved him very much. But if you really look at the fact that Vidura was born to a servant lady, and Dhritarashtra and Pandu, they were born to the wives of the king. But everyone in the palace, everybody respected Vidura so much. So Vidura's personality was like that. Nobody ever thought that he is the, except probably Duryodhana, but Dhritarashtra really appreciated his brother. So when Vidura came and said, "Is this how you want to end your life?" and to a person who is Dhritarashtra, who even associated with Krishna. In fact, he knew who Krishna was in his heart of hearts, but still his mind was blocked because of this ignorance and deep attachment to his son, and therefore he would not surrender. So finally, when Dhritarashtra got those harsh instructions from Vidura, at that point, before, at an earlier time, Vidura would give advice, but not in this way. Finally, Vidura came with a determination. He thought there is no point in pampering this person anymore. Why? Because Vidura really wanted the ultimate welfare of Dhritarashtra. That's what you do. If you really want the welfare of someone, you don't just dance around. You don't just polish it anymore, because you came to a point where you need to deliver the message as it is. And that's exactly what Vidura did. No more pampering. So all the friendly instructions that were given in the past, that's not the methodology at this point, because Vidura knew that he needed to deliver it really straight. And that's how he became very harsh, chastising Dhritarashtra. And so when that happened, Dhritarashtra had that awakening. That is his own spiritual awakening. So each one of us, we all will have our own spiritual awakening. No question about that. Because we are not different in that way. Every person who is practicing will have their own spiritual awakening at some point in their life. We may think like, oh, this is only applicable to someone else. No, it can come to us in different ways, different forms. So in the case of Dhritarashtra, this is how it came. So here in this verse, it is said he cheated Sanjaya. He cheated Sanjaya, but he did not really cheat Sanjaya. It was Dhritarashtra's moment of spiritual awakening. So it was time to cut the knot. There is a saying like that. You cut the knot and leave, go. And there is no other way of putting it. You have to cut the knot and go. There is no more room for, dancing around there. So he cut the knot finally and he left. And each and every one of us will have to cut the knot at some point. And those of us who know the seriousness of it will cut it. The sooner, the better. But of course, there is a time for anything, because you cannot prematurely, you will not be able to do that. So Prabhupada himself, he speaks about his own sannyas initiation. So if Prabhupada's family had supported him in his spiritual undertaking, like with his study of books and translation and all those things, if they had supported him, he would have probably remained a householder. But he left home because of not that favorable environment. And in his dreams, his spiritual master appeared 3 times. And every time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati appeared in his dream, Prabhupada was like literally shuddering. He was thinking, "Oh, the sannyas is very, very serious. I don't want to do that." So finally, he took, his god brother gave him initiation. So this is a serious thing. And so in this verse, all this talk about for a higher purpose, one is getting cheated for. What is that higher purpose? The higher purpose, higher cause it is to set an example to the rest of the society. All these great personalities that Prabhupada listed there, they lived their life in such an exemplary way, and they set an example for the rest of the society. So we all have heard that if someone takes up spiritual life, even if we don't complete our, all the so-called millions of material responsibilities, one is freed from the obligations or obligation to satisfy demigods and forefathers, etc. Everything is included in service to Krishna. We have some debts to repay. For example, we have some debt to repay to our parents. All that hard work they have put into bringing us up. And how do we repay that? When we become parents and when we take care of our children, we are repaying that debt to the parents. And so this is how the society, the system works. And in this whole words about lying and cheating, we are also advised that Brahmanas should be very truthful, because truthfulness is the last leg of dharma that is still holding up. And yet you see here the example of Krishna requesting Yudhishthira to tell a lie. Ashwatthama is killed. And previous verse or so, it was said that Yudhishthira is Ajada Shatru. He had no enemies. He had this particular benediction that his feet will not touch the ground because of the character that he had. But Lord Krishna instructed him to lie because Drona otherwise would not have been defeated. Not only is Drona, he was an expert in all these military arts, but so many years of experience, who can defeat him? And it was a must that Arjuna, he had to defeat Drona. And Krishna had to make sure that Drona leave his body. And Krishna knew his weakness, which was his attachment to his son, Ashwatthama, who was like kind of an okay person, but eventually, because of association with Duryodhana, he became a bad, he developed this bad character. So, it is said that Ashwatthama is still atoning for the sins of killing the sons of the Pandavas. So Krishna requested Yudhishthira to say Ashwatthama is killed. And even though the instruction was coming from Krishna, Yudhishthira couldn't take it. And therefore, it is said that his feet touched the ground. Not because he said a lie, because in fact, it was not even a full lie, because Bhima had to kill that elephant Ashwatthama. And therefore, Yudhishthira said, Ashwatthama hada kunjara. And so he was not even telling a full lie. It was a partial lie. So what was the problem? The problem was the hesitation to execute the desire of Krishna or the instruction of Krishna. This is the main point I was trying to stress from the beginning. The hesitancy to execute the instruction of Krishna. So that's where Yudhishthira's problem was. But in all these circumstances where a Mahatma or a great soul cheats, we have to remember in these circumstances, all the people involved are fully benefited. Particularly in the case of Krishna giving instruction, everybody is instructed. Drishtadyumna was destined to kill Drona because he was born from the fire to kill Drona. And take an example of Prabhupada. He could have sat in California in some ashram and done a program. Instead of that, he sent his disciples all over the world to preach. And not that he did not anticipate any problems or struggles that will come, but he took the challenge and he asked everyone to go and preach. He could have just kept quiet and stayed in one place, but knowingly he sent people. He knew problems will come. So for a greater cause, he had to not to reveal all the problems to the people. and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message need to be spread. And so in the end, there is no loss or diminution, because even in the case of Sanjaya, even though Dhritarashtra left, there was no time, there was no point in explaining why he was leaving. Dhritarashtra had finally cut the knot and he's gone. And so Sanjaya also is benefited because he had the association of Sanjaya had the association of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And Dhritarashtra, ultimately, he did what he needed to do. Gandhari was following him. And, like Gandhari was just like Mandodari was to Ravana. And finally, what happened, he perfected his life by doing Ashtanga Yoga, and by the fire generated from his own body, he left his body and Gandhari entered that fire. We all know that. But even Gandhari's destination was probably even higher than that of Dhritarashtra, because she was such a chaste lady. We don't know what their destination was. And so we also, as ordinary practicing devotees, we will reach a threshold where we will come to the point of understanding that there is no other way other than surrender. That everybody will reach that threshold to make any further progress. So just to conclude, Vidura, he was both delighted and he was also very much aggrieved at seeing the departure of Dhritarashtra. Because why he was delighted? Because he could see very quickly he perfected in Ashtanga Yoga, and he burned his body in that self-generated fire. And he was astonished to see this wonderful, marvelous transformation that is taking place in the life of Dhritarashtra. But at the same time, he was very sad that his brother did not become a pure devotee, because Dhritarashtra, being an offender, he was an offender in many, many respects. And because of that, he attained only liberation, and he did not attain love for God. Krishna Prema did not happen. Thank you very much. Sorry for all the troubles we had with the internet and Zoom and all that. If anyone would like to add or contribute something to this discussion, invite all of you. Hare Krishna. Just wait for a couple of minutes. Lingaraj Prabhu, looks like everybody's enlightened, and so 1, 2, and 3. And if there is no comments or no discussion, we can close this.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, who is this? Jyotirmaya.
Jyotirmaya Dasi. One second, my Prabhu has a question.
Hare Krishna Premananda Mataji. Please
Hari
accept the obeisances. All Guru Shri Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhu.
I have a question regarding the subject which you touched about, not to disobey the instructions that are coming from higher authority, especially from Krishna. So in the current scenario, like if I understand if the instructions are coming from bona fide spiritual sources, that is fine. Or sometimes some horoscopical or some situations that arise, and then they say these are the instructions. How do we really take those sort of instructions? Or because they say this is higher instructions that received as part of the horoscope and all those things. How do we really take those as a grain of salt, or how to really understand those information?
You're talking about if there is some horoscopic instruction is telling you to do something, but that does not instruction.
So, yeah, something in those
Can
lines.
you?
Yes.
Well, you see, it is a fact that planets does have an influence on all of our life. It is a fact. There is a science to that. That the time in which we are born and the position of the planets in various what you call it at the zodiacs, and it has an influence on our lives. It is a fact. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur studied the astrology in the early part of his life. He was such an expert astrologer. But you see his life, there are times when he had spent so many, what is that, chanting so many billion names, just living in a small hut, and that of his life. And with regard to application of these horoscope predictions and things, there are times such as I think Prabhupada did okay that we have to take instruction from Prabhupada. He is our Parama Guru, and Prabhupada had said that there were like marriage situations and all. We do check the horoscope to see if there is some kind of a alignment. However, as we know, there are these days the people who practice horoscope also, who study, they're not experts either. You go to one person, he says something you don't want to hear. You go to another one, that one says opposite, that something you want to hear. And we kind of tend to lean towards the person who seem to be speaking something we wish to hear. This is and so then you go to three different people, three different opinions, and you don't even know which one is right and which one is wrong. And ultimately, one thing is for sure, chanting process, it nullifies many of the it is considered as a secondary benefit. Primary benefit is developing love for Krishna, and the secondary benefits including like ghosts, and nothing will affect you, and the influence of the planets will not be there. And this is a fact. This is a fact for those who have practiced spiritual life. You will see always our spiritual practices gives us the ability to cross over any situation in life. And yet there may be an occasion such as marriage or something where people may check. However, even when you check and you find something which may or may not you may not like, there may be other considerations or guidances required to make such a decision. Because there are some people I have seen, sometimes parents get too attached to their children that they will come up with a lot of arguments that, oh, because of such and such, they think they are going to decide the life of their child. No, the life of the child is already determined, and one can only take only so much guidance from these other sciences that are valid. And yet there is a reasonable way to address these things. We need not get too attached to analyzing horoscope, because everything ultimately it is subsidiary to the process that we have undertaken, which is the dependence on Krishna. And we cannot get completely caught up in guidance coming from astrology and forget everything else that we are taught. See, it's about how much weight you want to give where in your life.
Right.
We may check a horoscope in a certain situation to see what is going on. Why is it like so many accidents and things? Some people, they go through these kind of situations to see what is happening. I mean, maybe we will understand what is happening. Yeah, maybe there is a planetary influence or something is happening. Yeah, but can we give up? Do we give up our process of bhakti process that was given to us just because all of that is happening? No, whether it is good or bad situation, we increase our focus and attention to the process that is given to us. So it may be one thing to try to understand. We all want like a black and white answer. Why is this happening?
Right.
Yeah, even let us say, even if we understood, oh, maybe this is the influence of Saturn, and that is why such and such is happening. Okay, well and good. Then this is the time for me to depend more upon Krishna.
Right.
That's how a devotee processes it. I don't know if I am answering your question.
No, no, Mataji, I think that I'm able to connect a lot of dots through this. No, it's the core thing is like you take the. It is okay to see astrology as a guidance or a directions, but it is the solution point is more dependency on a Krishna consciousness and taking a deeper shelter in circumstancing which demands more through this.
Yes, and also not allowing ourselves to be too much carried away by any of these other methodologies, any
Right.
methodology for that matter. And with regard to taking deeper shelter, any practicing devotee, that should be our ultimate goal of taking deeper shelter. And it is see, like I was telling you, every devotee will come to that threshold. See, Dhritarashtra came to that threshold of his life of clear, cut the knot and go. That happened to him. The entire family is dead, everybody is gone. He was still clinging on to his life in that palace, and living like a I mean, of course, the what is it, our Yudhishthira Maharaj loved him, and he was respectfully treating them and everything. But in spite of that, Vidura, such a wonderful personality, his advice was, leave all of this and go. There is no point in sitting here and enjoying this in your old age. And so there is a point. And Dhritarashtra did not listen to anything until that point. But we need to recognize he reached his threshold at that point. And
Right.
Vidura's unlimited mercy, he came to give that to him at the right time. And he was willing to accept that. And he crossed the threshold and he went. It could happen to us in a different way. Each one of us, we have our own threshold to cross. And it could be maybe our children may cross it much quicker than any one of us, because maybe people like us who have lived a different lifestyle, and I'm just generalizing, like without proper understanding of what is spiritual attachment and material detachment, we may speak about it but may not implement it in our life, and the threshold is not going to come sooner. It will probably come later, because you have children, you have children's children and children's children's children, and you can get completely bound up in this. This is why this Vanaprastha ashram, which was discussed many times, like, do anybody know what is Vanaprastha? Do any practicing devotee is thinking about that at all in our current state? Everybody is so comfortable with whatever is going on in their life and their children's life and everything else. Yeah, we have to do our duty, but are we planning to stay here forever, in this state of deep attachment, being concerned only about the material well-being of the family and friends? No, we should not be. But if you have to even to cross that threshold, you have to put some thoughts. It's not going to come on its own. We have to allow. This is why our free thinking, willing process, every individual has their own free thinking and willing process. One time somebody called me and asked about opinion. I have no idea from where, about their child, a small child, 5-year-old or something, he need to plan for sending the child to a college. And I said, why did you call me? Because you had a child and wanted to know. I said, I don't know whether my advice is going to help at all, because my attitude towards this was totally different. And if you ask this question to 5 other people, their attitudes will be different. And so you have to come to your own decision. What do I want to do? How much I want to do? Which way I want to do? So there is an application of our own intelligence, our own what to call the tiny bit of freedom of thinking that we have, using it properly. And you can use it properly only if you have full faith in Krishna. Otherwise, you will be entangled in different ways. And honestly speaking, this person had already gone to 5 different people asking, how did you plan for your child's education? As though this is the main thing in our life. Krishna provides, and there is a common sense with which you do things, but you don't need to overdo this. And so when we can go and consult to various ABCD people, and also get completely confused, just like the astrology situation, or have a very clear thinking and have total dependence on Krishna, and you execute your spiritual duties and responsibilities in a proper way and with seriousness and sincerity. The Lord is there within our heart, and He is guiding us every step of the way. Only thing is we are not listening. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Mataji, you nailed exactly on the example, and that's really applicable to my current situation. Thank you very much, Mataji. Really helpful.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And one more thing, since we have a few people here, just wanted to make sure that you all come on Wednesday. Take half day off from your work and be there, because this is once in a lifetime opportunity to be there for our construction beginning. And you can put your shovel on the ground and be part of that blessing of the cornerstone, and this won't come again in your life. So more important than marriages and other festivals and those kind of things, this is so super important. Please be there. And thank you so very much for your patience, and please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.